Hello guys, I am Daiba from your own channel Audio Visual Books. I am here with the book The Diary of a Young Girl as we have started by AnneFrank. Let's start and read few of its more pages to our audio visual books. Let's start. Sunday, September 27, 1942. Dearest Kitty, Mother and I had a so-called discussion today. But the annoying part is that I burst into tears. I can't help it. Dad is always nice to me, and he also understands me much better. At moments like these, I can't stand Mother. It is obvious that I am a stranger to her. She does not even know what I think about the most ordinary things. We were talking about maids and the fact that you are supposed to refer to them as domestic help these days. She claimed that when the war is over, that is what they will want to be called. I did not quite see it that way. Then she added that I talk about litter so often and that I act as if I were such a lady, even though I am not. But I don't think building sand castles in the air is such a terrible thing to do, as long as you don't take it too seriously. At any rate, Dad usually comes to my defense. Without him, I would not be able to stake it out there. I don't get along with Margaret very well either. Even though our family never has the same kind of outbursts they have upstairs, I find it far from present. Margaret's and Mother's personality are so alien to me. I understand my girlfriends better than my own mother. Is not that a shame? For the umpteenth, for the umpteenth time, Mrs. Vendon is sulking. She is very moody and has been removing from more and more of her belongings and locking them up. It is too bad Mother does not repay every non-despairing act with a frank despairing act. Some people like the Vandons seem to take special delight not only in raising their own children but in helping others raise theirs. Margaret does not need it, since she is naturally good, kind, and clever, perfection itself. But I seem to have more mischief for the two of us. More than once, the air has been filled with the Vandons, admonitions, and my saucy replies. Father and Mother always defend me fiercely. Without them, I would not be able to jump back into the fray with my usual composure. They keep telling me I should talk less, mind my own business, and be more modest. But I seem doomed to failure. If father were not so patient, I had have long ago given up hope of ever meeting my parents' quite moderate expectations. If I take a small helping of a vegetable, I loathe and eat potatoes instead. The Vandons, especially Mrs. Vandon, can't get over how spoiled I am. Come on and eat some more vegetables, she says. No, thank you, ma'am, I reply. The potatoes are more than enough. Vegetables are good for you. Your mother says so too. Have some more, she insists, until father intervenes and upholds my right to refuse a dish I don't like. Then Mrs. Mondon really flies off the handle. You should have been at our house where children were brought up the way they should be. I don't call this a proper upbringing and is terribly spoiled. I never allowed it if Anne was my daughter. This is always how her tirades begin and end. If Anne were my daughter. Thank goodness I am not. But to get back to the subject of raising children, yesterday a silence fell after Mrs. Wendy finished her little speech. Father had replied, I think Anne is a very well brought up. At least she has learned not to respond to your interminable sermons. As far as the vegetables are concerned, all I have to say is look who is calling the kettle black. Mrs. was soundly defeated. The pot calling the cat black refers, of course, to Madame herself, since she can't tolerate beans or any kind of cabbage in the evening because they give her gas. But I could say the same What a dope do you think? In any case, let's hope she stops talking about me. It's so funny to see how quickly Mrs. Vandon flushes. I don't, and it secretly annoys her no end. Yours then. Monday, September 28, 1942. Dearest Kitty, I had to stop yesterday. Though I was nowhere near finished, I am dying to tell you about another one of our clashes. But before I do, I like to say this. I think it is odd that grown ups quarrel so easily and so often and about such petty matters. Up to now, I always thought bickering was just something children did and that they outgrew it. Often, of course, there is sometimes a reason to have a real quarrel, but the verbal exchanges that take place here are just pain bickering. I should be used to the fact that these squabbles are daily occurrences, and but I am not, and never will be as long as I am the subject of nearly every discussion. They refer to these as discussions instead of quarrels, but Germans don't know the difference. They criticize everything, and I mean everything about me, my behavior, my personality, my manners. Every inch of me, from head to toe and back again, is the subject of gossip and debate. Harsh words and shouts are constantly being flung at my head, though I am absolutely not used to it. According to the powers that be, I'm supposed to grin and bear it, but I can't. I have no intention of taking their insults lying down. I will show them that AnneFrank was not born yesterday. They will sit up and take notice and keep their big mouths shut when I make them see they ought to attend to their own manners instead of mine. How dare they act that way? It is simply barbaric. I have been astonished time and again at such rudeness and most of all at such stupidity, Mrs. Van Dorn. But as soon as I have gotten used to the idea, and they should not take long, I will give them a taste of their life, of their own medicine, and they will change their tune. Am I really as bad? Mannered, headstrong, stubborn, pushy, stupid, lazy, etc., as the Van Dorn says I am? No, of course not. I know I have my faults and shortcomings, but they blow them all out of the portion. If you only knew, Kitty, how I sit when they scold and mock me, I would not take long before I explode with pent up rage. But enough of that. I have bored you long enough with my quarrels, and yet I can't resist adding a highly interesting dinner conversation. Somehow, we landed on the subject of Pim's extreme diffidence. His modesty is well-known fact. His modesty is a well-known fact which even the stupidest person would not dream of questioning. All of a sudden, Mrs. Vandon feels the need of bring herself into every conversation. Remarked, "I am very modest and retiring too, much more so than my husband." Have you ever heard anything so ridiculous? This sentence clearly illustrates that she is so exactly what you had called modest. Mr. Vandon, who felt obliged to explain the much more so than my husband, answered calmly, "I have no desire to be modest and retiring. In my experience, you get a lot further by being pushy and returning to me." He added, "Don't be modest and retiring, and it will get you nowhere." Mother agreed completely with this viewpoint, but as usual, Mrs. Vandon had to add her 2 cents. This time, however, instead of addressing me directly, she turned to my parents and said, "You must have a strange outlook on life to be able to say that, to N. Things were different when I was growing up, and though they probably have not changed much since then, except in your modern household." This was a direct hit at mother's modern child rearing methods, which she has defended on many occasions. Mrs. Vandon was so upset, her face turned bright red. People who flush easily become even more agitated when they feel themselves getting hot under the collar, and they quickly lost to their opponents. The non-flushed mother, who now wanted to have the matter over and done with as quickly as possible, paused for a moment to think before she replied. Well, Mrs. Vandon, I agree that it is much better if a person is not over modest. My husband, Margaret, and better are all exceptionally modest. Your husband and I, though not exactly the opposite, don't let ourselves be pushed around. Mrs. Vandon. Oh, but Mrs. Frank, I don't understand what you mean. Honestly, I am extremely modest and retiring. How can you say that I am pushy? Mother, I did not say you were pushy, but no one would describe you as having a retiring disposition. Mrs. Wendy, I had liked to know in that way I am pushy. If I did not look out for myself here, no one else would, and I had soon stop. But that does not mean I am not as modest and retiring as your husband. Mother had no voice but to laugh at this ridiculous self defense, which irritated Mrs. Van Dorn. Not exactly a born debater, she continued her magnificent account in a mixture of German and Dutch until she got so tangled up in her own words that she finally rose from her chair and was just about to leave the room when her eye fell on me. You should have seen her. As luck would have it, the moment the moment Mrs. Wendy turned around, I was shaking my head in a combination of compassion and irony. I was not doing it on purpose, but I had followed her tirade so intently that my reaction was completely involuntary. Mrs. Wendy wheeled around and gave me a tongue, lashing hard, Germanic, mean, vulgar, exactly like some fat, red-faced fishwife. I was a joy to behold. If I could draw, I had liked to have sketched her as she was then. She struck me as so comical. The silly little scatterbrain. I have learned one thing. You only rarely get to know a person after a fight. Only then can you judge their true character. Yours, N. Tuesday, September 29, 1942. Dearest Kitty, the strangest things happen to you when you are in hiding. Try to picture this. Because we don't have a bathtub, we wash ourselves in a washtub, and because there is only hot water in the office, by which I mean the entire lower floor. The seven of us take turns making the most of this great opportunity. But since none of us are alike and are all plugged by varying degrees of modesty, each member of the family has selected a different place to wash, whether it is a bath in the office kitchen, even though it has a glass door. When it's time for this bath, he goes around to each of us in turn and announces that we should not walk past the kitchen for the next half hour. He considered he considers his mayor to be sufficient. Mrs. Vandy Mrs. Vandy takes his bath upstairs, figuring that the safety of his own room outweighs the difficulty of having to carry the hot water up all those stairs. Mrs. Vandy has yet to take a bath. She is waiting to see which is the best place. Father baths in the private office and mother in the kitchen behind a fire screen, while Margaret and I have declared the front office to be our bathing grounds. Since the curtains are drawn on Saturday afternoon, we scrub ourselves in the dark, while the one who is not in the bath looks out the window through a chink in the curtains and gazes in wonder at the endlessly amusing people. A week ago, I decided I did not like this spot and have been on the lookout for more comfortable bathing quarters. It was Peter who gave me the idea of setting my washtub in the spacious office bathroom. I can sit down, turn on the light, lock the door, pour out the water without anyone's help, and all without the fear of being seen. I used my lovely bathroom for the first time on the on Sunday, and strange as it may seem, I like it better than any other place. The plumber was at work downstairs on Wednesday, moving the water pipes and drains from the office bathroom to the hallway so that pipes would not freeze during a cold winter. The plumber's visit was far from pleasant. Not only were we are not allowed to run water during the day, but the bathroom was also off limits. I will tell you how we handle this problem. You may find it unseemly of me to bring it up, but I am not so prudish about matters of this kind. On the day of our arrival, Father and I improved a chamber pot, sacrificing a canning jar for this purpose. For the duration of the plumber's visit, canning jars were put into service during the daytime to hold our calls of nature. As far as I was concerned, this was not half as difficult as having to sit still all day and not say a word. You can imagine how hard that was to miss quack, quack, quack. On ordinary days, we have to speak in a whisper. Not being able to talk or move at all is 10 times worse. After 3 days of constant sitting, my backside was stiff and sore. Lightly calisthenic helped Jurzen. Thursday, October 1, 1942. Dear Kitty, yesterday I had a horrible fright. At 8 o'clock, the doorbell suddenly rang. All I could think of was that someone was coming to get us. You know how I mean. You know who I mean, but I calmed down when everybody swore it must have been either pranksters, pranksters or the mailman. The days here are very quiet. Mrs. Levinson, a little Jewish pharmacist and chemist, is working for Mr. Kugler in the kitchen. Since he is familiar with the entire building, we are in constant dread that he will take it into his head to go have a look at what used to be the laboratory. We are as still as baby mice. Who would have guessed 3 months ago that Quicksilver N would have to sit so quietly for hours on end, and what is more, that she could. Mrs. Van Dorn's birthday was the 29th. Though we did not have a large celebration, she was showered with flowers, simple gifts, and good food. Apparently, the red carnations from her spouse are a family tradition. Let me pass a moment on the subject of Mrs. Van Dorn and tell you that her attempts to flirt with father are a constant source of irritation to me. She pats him on the cheek and head, hikes up her skirt, and makes so-called witty remarks in an effort to get Pim's attention. Fortunately, he finds her neither pretty nor charming, so he does not respond to her flirtation. As you know, I am quite the jealous type and I can't abide her behavior. After all, mother does not act the way toward Mr. Vandy, which is what I told Mrs. Vandy right to her face. From time to time, Peter can be very amusing. He and I have one thing in common. We like to dress up, which makes everyone laugh. One evening, we made our appearance with Peter in one of his mother's skin-tight dress and me in the suit. He wore a hat. I had a cap on. The grown ups split their side laughing, and we enjoyed ourselves every bit as much. Mab bought new skirts for Margaret and me at the Bijan Cove. The fabric is hideous, like the burlap bag potatoes come in. Just the kind of thing the department stores would not dare sell in the olden days, now costing 24 guilder Margaret's and 7.75 guilders mine. We have a nice treat in store. Babs ordered a correspondence course in shorthand for Margaret, Patter, and me. Just you wait. By this time next year, we will be able to take perfect shorthand in any case, learning to write A secret code is really interesting. I have a terrible pain in my index finger on the left hand, so I can't do any ironing. What luck. Mr. Van Dons wants me to sit next to him at the table, since Margaret does not eat enough to suit him. Fine with me, I like changes. There is always a teeny black cat roaming around the yard, and it reminds me of my dear sweet mortgagee. Another reason I welcome the change is that Mama's always carping at me, especially at the table. Now Margaret will have to be at the brunt of it, or rather would not, since Mother does not make such sarcastic remark to her. Not to that paragon of virtue. I am always teasing Margaret about being a paragon of virtue these days, and she hates it. Maybe it will teach her not to be such a goody. High time she learned. To end this, uh, uh, to end this hodgepodge of news, a particularly amusing joke told by Mr. Van Dorn. What goes click 99 times and clack once. A centipede with a club foot.